Welcome. I'm your host, Lindsey Roussel, guiding you through the minds of the new society's most brilliant thinkers and creators. Together, we'll uncover the passions and projects that are shaping the future, one new idea at a time. Here, it's all about innovation, inspiration, and the incredible individuals behind it. This is Who Knew? So, in today's episode, we're turning the spotlight to a true visionary, a leader who's redefining what it means to create memorable brand experience and share his love of music. With over 25 years in the music, entertainment, luxury, and marketing industries, he's a master of his craft. His philosophy, ideas worth experiencing, is not just a tagline, it's the driving force behind his approach to transforming moments into lasting memories. Join me as we delve into a journey of impactful collaborations with prestigious global brands and his unique insights into the world of youth choir groups. Welcome to the show, Ced Scott.
Wow.
Did
Wow.
I get
Did you
it?
get it? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to take you everywhere.
I'm the hype man.
That
That's
is
my
so
job
hype. Oh
here.
my gosh. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you for having me. This is
absolutely.
awesome. I'm
Good.
really on cloud nine now.
Well, good. I we talked a little bit before the show. You have
Yeah.
some amazing things going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Jumping, I guess ahead of myself, thinking about on my way here, I have tinted windows. Let me just paint the picture. And I love tinted windows. I don't care what kind of car I'll have. I'll
I'm with
always
you.
have tinted windows.
West Bank tent is what I like to call
Oh,
it.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's funny enough because I just moved to the West, man. That's so crazy. But I'm blasting New Edition. Like it's so crazy. I left the gym. I got with the trainer as of the last month and a half, and I left the gym. We meet at 5:15. And I got into the car and put on my New Edition playlist. And the first song is, If It Isn't Love. And I went back home and turned on the video to watch it, and it gave me an introduction because the music video introduction is very different than the actual song on
Uh-huh.
the album. And that 40 seconds gave me an introduction to how I'm gonna launch, which is super, super exciting. So I can't wait for you to see it. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you are a jack of many trades here. So you've done a bunch of things. We do not have time to talk about all of
Yeah.
them, but there are two things that I'm very interested in.
Yep.
One is this luxury brand marketing world and the experiences that you build around it,
hmm
and the youth choir that you're putting together here in New Orleans.
Sure.
So let's start the journey of this brand experience. What drew you to that field of industry?
So something I recently coined, I was talking to somebody that's gonna, sit on my advisory board, and we had lunch, a week and a half ago, and I realized what happened was I got myself into what I call beautiful distractions. And I was a performer. I was in a choir. My choir director at the time was Reverend Miles, amazing singer, but he was killed at 41. He was 41 years old by a former student,
Yikes.
which was crazy. But it was 94 when I got in his choir, but I also had my own musical group, right? And it was an amazing experience. He helped us tremendously with so much. He even helped arrange our music when we went on Showtime at the Apollo. He was front row, front and center, amazing. And ended up doing a smaller group at the Praline Connection. As you'll see where it's going. Um, the smaller group only was 6 people. It was two tenors, which is me and good friend Corey, and two altos, two sopranos. And it was at the Praline Connection
Hmm.
where it's now the Howling Wolf. Howling Wolf. And great, 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 great experience. But I was young and I was looking at all the cash that the waiters was making. I didn't grow up with my dad, single mom.
Hmm.
So money was always a thing that I was like psychologically saying, I gotta help family, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And so even though I'm enjoying myself mentally as a performer, I'm looking at that cash like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
look at his squad
Yeah.
versus mine. And so I then started bussing, and the more and more I started doing that, the cash felt better and the performance kind of started taking a back seat. And long story short, I started excelling. We opened up a Praline connection at the airport. So I was a waiter and during the night at the Praline connection, but I opened the airport every morning. So I
Wow.
was like twice a day. I had to be there open 4 6. And long story short, a friend of mine he started working at Nissan. And so, at the time, there was no real, it was always pages. So we would talk, every now and then, and he would always talk about the new cars that he's driving. I was like, man, this is crazy. And so again, I'm chasing something that,
Hmm?
I wasn't fulfilled enough. So I'm always chasing something over the month first. And now I'm like, oh, I want to drive new
Yeah.
cars. And so I literally called every dealership I could from that moment. And the one that said, yeah, we are hiring for porters, because he was a porter, was Mercedes Benz. Strange, right? And so I ended up booking the porter job. Jokes on me. He was a new car porter. I ended up in a service.
Uh-huh.
So I never got to drive the new cars. I got to wash service cars. But I was in. Well, and so as time went on, I started experiencing a different side of life, a different side of people, the lawyers, the doctors, the judges, you name it, the drug dealers, the life of luxury just overwhelmed me. And I was like, oh, again, I started chasing something. And so eventually, I elevated to cashier within the first, I don't think 6 months, because I was hustling at this
Sure.
point. That led to service advisor, that led to sales. And so 10 years later, the music had totally taken a back seat because I was like, psh, by the time I turned 21, I was making six figures. And so it was just like, wow, this is the life.
Yeah.
So I thought, right? Um, and so that led me to, Katrina happened, and then, we eventually came back, and then there was BMW, Porsche, Audi, which is, all kind of in the same family. Most people don't know that the BMW dealership was very, very connected to Tom Benson's world.
Hmm.
Porsche Audi was owned by Benson at the time. And so again, I'm seeing the same circle of people all the time. And it's just like, man, I just love this life, and, the style and the clothes and the cars. And it just continued to stay in my world. And so, thinking from a performance perspective, I just took those worlds and started meshing how I communicated. And that's how the brand experience stuff came about.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I
It's
mean,
weird, weird.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I feel like that's how so many things go. And if you wouldn't have taken that initial opportunity at Probably in Connection,
yeah,
who knows, if you would have just been fine bussing tables
yeah,
and that'd have been it,
yeah,
sticking your little $40 a shift into your pocket,
yeah,
then
yeah,
there's no way you'd be where you are now.
absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the key lessons that you actually learned from working with those industry giants? I mean, it not just the what you wanted, the clothes and the money and the cars, and what you actually learn from those people, from that experience.
I think my biggest takeaway from all of the experience that I've endured is the narrative matters the most. And second to that is fully, unapologetically owning that. You know, when I think about the journey and the pieces that came along with it, I slowly allowed my narrative to disappear because I started following somebody else's script. And when that happens, you start to dwindle down your own narrative. And when that happens, a lot of confusion comes into play. Like when you talk to people and you start experiencing other worlds and they ask you, like, what's this and what's that? And to them, it's like, well, what? But you're really just trying to satisfy and figure out a way to get back to your narrative.
Yeah.
But there's so many confusing pieces that's connected to you. They're like, what? And until people fully understand a thing, they tend to stay away from it, right? Like it's the true definition of ignorance. Like if you don't know,
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna stay away. And so until you can fully paint a picture for somebody or tell the narrative the way you should, you'll never ever get to the place where you need to go. And so understanding like Coke. I'll give you a funny story. I was at Harris, is one of my in between spaces, and it was Super Bowl. Funny enough, we're talking about Super Bowl, and it's,
Right.
it's approaching here 10 years later. Um, Pepsi ended up buying out the room. I operated Masquerade, which is a huge space inside, and they bought out the room for a week. And there's this big, for those that don't know, there's this big tower that actually illuminates. It can be a video screen, and so forth, so on, so it can change colors. And then inside of the Ultra Lounge is a small area. Inside of the Masquerade is an Ultra Lounge. It's a small area that has about 6 or 7 sconces, wall sconces. And what was crazy about that, we have a 12,000 square foot space, a smaller, maybe 1,500 square foot area, and even smaller identifiable wall sconces. Pepsi wanted them down because the covers were red,
Wow.
right? And so thinking about that, when
Yeah.
you understand, like we're talking about this magnitude of space, but they wanted it down because that's Coke.
Sure.
That's a narrative owning that says we're unapologetically who we are. You like it, you like it, you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
But we're nudging forward,
Yeah.
and you're still stuck trying to understand it. And so that was a lesson. That was a lesson to say, man, I miss myself. I miss myself going through all of those things and trying to people please. It's gotten me back to a point where the people pleasing part is kind of out the window, and the narrative is the most important thing that I can speak to.
So the story is really what shapes your approach to marketing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think when you, or not, obviously you would, but when anyone understands, when you're trying to get a message across, you can't, pivoting is important when something may not work or whatever, but you also have to understand, like I used to tell artists when I managed them, they would always say, well, my friends want me to do this song, or my friends think I should do that song. I was like, well, what moves you? And they'd say, well, I like this one. I was like, because at the end of the day, your friend's name isn't on that cover, right? And it takes a lot of time for people to really understand that, if you're pushing something, it's for you to push, regardless of who's on board or not. Because the regret factor weighs way more,
Totally.
way more, because you're gonna sit at home alone, and you're gonna say to yourself, man, I wish I would have, I wish I would have, I wish I would have. And I've spent years saying, I wish I would have, I wish I would have. And you know, you just have to drive your story.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll show you a picture later. During the Praline Connection time, um, one of the guests was Debbie Allen,
Okay.
and it was her and Clifton Davis, the guy who's you starred on Amen with Sherman Hemsley, the guy from Good, not Good Times, the Jeffersons, and they were getting ready to do a stage play around the country. And there was a time when I was dancing. I was dancing, that was part of my
Oh, I
show.
definitely need
It
to
was,
see a
oh
picture.
yeah, it was crazy. So I was a part of the show, even after Raymond would call me up, people were requesting, so I would perform with them as a, from as a dancing piece. And she came up to me after and she said, "Where did you train?" And I was like, "I watched Michael Jackson." Like I was a young dude. I didn't have the formal.
Sure.
I was like, "I watched Michael Jackson," and she gave me her phone number, and she said, "We're doing this play. You'd be awesome." It's like, great. I never called her.
Why not?
I don't know. I say I don't know now, but I was like, okay, my girlfriend, I can't leave my girlfriend. I gotta make this money for my family. I gotta, again,
Mm-hmm.
everybody else's narrative,
Sure.
right? And it's just one of those big regrets that stays so heavy in my mind and in my heart. Every time I see it, every time I see something from her,
Yeah.
I'm always like, I wish I would have,
Yeah.
I should have, I
Yeah.
could have. And yeah, it's just crazy.
And it's hard. The hindsight is 2020 is of
Oh,
course the most famous thing because it's the actual truth. But I'm, different girlfriend now, different car, different job, different life
yeah,
completely.
totally different.
And it's all about what you're sort of brave enough to jump into
Yeah,
at the time.
yeah,
And it's all
absolutely.
about, I agree, self-fulfillment,
Yeah, yeah,
because your boy is not sitting at home 10 years later saying, man, he should have added in that last bar into that song, or,
yeah,
if the intro would have been this,
yep.
everything could have been different, but you are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
So, explain to me a little bit about your ideas worth experiencing philosophy, and then we'll sort of transition into the choir and the amazing things you're doing there.
So when I think of that phrase that I coined, my wife always, you know, teases me, messes with me in so many different ways, and I was always one of those people that became protective over the years. I stopped sharing. I was like, if I say this to somebody, somebody's gonna steal it and da 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 da. And and she was like, but yeah, but every time you do that, 10 more things come to you and this and that. So she was like, they just never stop. And for me, ideas worth experience, it really comes down to understanding the touch points of what a brand experience is about, right? Like you can say, I want to, ideate something and knock the visitor's socks off. Well, that's great. That's an idea. But then when you elevate it into something and understand that the touch points matter so much, the people at the casino thought I was crazy when I first said, how do we pipe vanilla in here? And it was like, what? I was like, it's a sensory thing.
Yep,
And they didn't understand that, because it was a gaming. They were,
sure.
focused on gaming. I was focused on entertaining. And I was like, well, the moment somebody walks into any space, if it's a bad smell, that's a
Yep,
touch point, right? And so when I think about the decor, the style, the look, the feel, the moment you walk up to somebody, it's a touch point,
yep.
right? And so I look at every single thing that I want somebody to experience, especially if I'm attached to it. I want them to say, the moment he walked in, or the moment I walked in this space, it felt like this, or it felt like that. And so that's my philosophy. It's like if you understand the dynamic of every single thing that you do, um, it matters. It really, really matters. I remember talking to a friend. Most people, know him, Dr. Abear, who's actually my both my daughter's pediatricians.
Uh-huh.
It's strange because I saw him a couple weeks ago and he saw that how big and grown and he was like, I cannot believe y'all are this big. And I remember asking him years ago, I was like, why do you always wear a bow tie? And he said for that very question. He said if I started wearing different kinds of stuff, I wouldn't be as recognizable. But you know me from that bow tie. I was like,
Damn.
brand experience,
Yep.
right? It's an experience and it says like, oh yeah, do you know Dr. Abraham? No, I don't. He's the guy that wears, oh yeah, I know exactly who that is. So when I think about everything that you do and engage as a brand, you should be able to leave something that's stamped into your guest or your visitor's mind that says, oh, I remember all of this stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's the journey. That's the beautiful thing. The moment somebody calls customer service, it's a touch point. Like people don't really understand the dynamics of every single thing that you do. It's part of the brand experience.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna do it, do it.
Do it
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
or do it as to the best of
To
your
the best of
ability,
your
at
ability.
least.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell me how you're going to do that with the boys choir, and what's your vision for this?
So, going back in time, I can remember getting ready for um, Showtime at the Apollo. And we were joking because we were talking about trips and back and forth to New York and how quote unquote my kids are spoiled in their own way, obviously because that's what my job was to do in mentally.
Sure.
Um, And I was like, well, y'all lucky we took the train to get to Harlem. It was, like y'all, you have no
Yeah.
idea what that's like to endure almost 24 hours on the train to get to New York. And I was like, it was the strangest thing. The episode that we're on, and I'll share a link with you. The episode that we were on, it was all singing groups. First time I had ever seen, because I would watch
Sure.
Apollo, and it was the craziest, most scary thing to see because everybody was amazing. Every single group was amazing, and we were supposed to be first on the show. Something happened, things got shifted. We ended up going last, and I was just like this. So my stress level, elevated. Like it was just crazy.
You watched five amazing acts
Oh,
ahead of
I'm
you, or
watching
just like,
them
oh my.
blow. I'm like, this is insane. What are we gonna do here? And the next thing you know, show starts. The first group who was blowing, they got booed. I was like, this ain't right. I'm saying to myself, this is just not right. Long story short, groups go, groups go. I think another group got booed. It was a female group from Mississippi, and they were amazing. I was like, I'm not going. I was literally like, I'm not going because I was like, if we get booed, I'm not going back to New Orleans. Like that, knowing,
Showing up
yeah,
and
like
yeah.
yeah, I'm like, I'm not going back to New Orleans. So we go out, we do the thing. Crowd loved it. I was like, finally. Um, and the whole Kiki Shepard thing happens. The applause happens. The Mississippi girls got all this applause. I was like, dang it. And then they came to us. And then we got a massive amount. I was like, huh. And so when I think about that moment, as a young person, black dude from New Orleans, enduring life, didn't grow up with my dad, going through these pieces, understanding, trying to find ways to get away from rejection, and when I say rejection, people can tell me no 100 times now. Like the most important person has already said no to me, right? Like I grew up, and the most important person in my life said no to me already. So no's don't really matter as much. And so that moment, I want to be able to pass that kind of feeling to the person that's misunderstood
Sure.
and the person that has talent, that has people in his corner that says you can do it. You just it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
But you just have to be able to embrace your gift unapologetically and fashion forward.
Yeah. I love that.
Fashion forward. And so to be able to just to think that I can give that to other people, that's the goal.
That's beautiful.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Like I can always win like that. Yeah. And so in the crux, that's the vision
That's beautiful.
because you never know where it might take you. Like I can easily say, had it not been for me singing, I would have never made it to the Praline Connection. I would have never said no to Debbie Allen in my own way. I would have never made, beeline to Mercedes Benz, right? Like all of these pieces are so connected. Like it's the craziest thing. But had it not been for me performing, I would have never took that journey. I
And
can almost guarantee it.
and so you're going to give that experience to as many
As many,
young kids as you can.
yeah. So the goal is to it's called the Fellows Project. And so the goal is to be able to get up to 100 young voices, middle school age to high school age,
Okay.
and create this awesome mass choir that can do what most people have not seen in a very, very long time. When I was coming up, at the time there was the Harlem Boys Choir, and I wanted to be in that choir so bad because I was in my own, but it was a mass choir. It was called the Rams, and it was guys, it was girls, and it was everything, right? But to see that, which is why I chose the fellows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a similarity that I'm trying to weave in
Sure.
between everything and to create this, fraternity-esque. It's never because I have daughters, so it's not like a discriminatory thing.
Sure.
It's understanding my own space that I needed that, and so when I had my own group and that brotherhood, that level of thing was just irreplaceable. It still is when I think about it. And so the Harlem Boys Choir was second to none. And there's not very many choirs that exist. Like there's the Vienna Boys Choir, um, maybe a couple more. But when you think about the musical richness of New Orleans, we tend to throw instruments, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. Like I love that. We tend to, because my dad, what I do know, my dad, he was a trumpet player. He taught me trumpet, bits and pieces. Like that was the thing. It was like when he did come around, he'd throw this thing,
Hmm.
it was like, I'll teach you this song. Bad was the first song he taught me, interestingly enough, by Michael Jackson. But it was the other pieces that I needed from him that I didn't get. And, thinking about all of those pieces and parts that connect to saying, oh, you're from New Orleans, you should play an instrument. When this is an instrument in and
Yeah.
of itself, it's your voice. Like you can do so much more with your voice than you probably could ever do with an instrument,
Yeah.
right? Like you can play an instrument beautifully. Like there's so many talented individuals that's musically impresarios, you just name it. But to be able to watch somebody just stand in one space, whether it's speaking, singing, talking, the diction, the changes, the staccato, like there's so much that can happen with your voice that why not?
Sure.
Why not say, let's take the voice, let's take the thing that you don't need to pick up. It's already there and master it. And so I'm just pumped.
And I imagine that New Orleans creative culture is going to play just like a monster role in building, both your songbook and, what you're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah,
And
yeah. So yesterday I was on a journey finding some stuff, and I'm gonna reach out to this guy, later on, because I was looking through microfilm. I haven't done that in probably 25 years at the library. And so as I'm looking at an article, this is one of the times my personal group, we were on a show called Big Time TV. And this program was a partnership between Brandon Tartikoff, a former NBC director, um, executive rather, who did some amazing work, but he partnered with Quincy Jones, who at the time owned WNOL here locally. And so they did a variety show, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was about 1,800 acts that auditioned for it. And then it got down, dwindled down to its final few, and Quincy was the last to judge, one of the last to judge. And we ended up getting chosen for the show. And as I'm looking at the story to talk about this relaunch for myself, there's a picture of us performing, and the director's name, guys, his name is Jim. And so I literally Googled this guy, and he lives here.
wow.
Mind blowing, right? And so I'm like, wait a minute. This guy from this picture from that many years ago lives in New Orleans. And so I'm gonna reach out to him to, to try to schedule some time with him and just kind of rekindle those moments. So again, so that I have a narrative, right? Going
Yeah.
back to the narrative to say, I how many people have had the opportunity to work on a Quincy Jones show?
Yeah.
Like by far to me the best producer that ever existed. He's worked with obviously Michael Jackson and Frank Sinatra, and I mean you just the plethora of the most awarded producer in the music industry history. I had that opportunity, and second to none. So as I'm building this stuff, I'm just putting all these notches in my belt so that they can understand like, man, you have no idea what's possible.
Yeah.
Like I'm still blown away with looking at all the pieces, like from a back, like taken aback by, wait a minute, I did this stuff. Like I did all of
Yeah,
this
that's
stuff.
me.
That's actually me.
Yeah,
It's actually mind blowing.
yeah.
I'm still kind of tripped out.
Something that we're exploring a lot here is that the the beautiful synchronicities that happen throughout life. You
Yep.
know, there's um, things that are serendipitous and things that are synchronistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is, the fact that Jim lives here.
Yeah.
I,
It's crazy.
I mean, that's
It's crazy.
mind blowing,
It's yeah.
and the fact that you can reconnect with him, somebody who was, this integral part of your past, played this monster, minute
Yeah.
role.
Yeah.
He might not have even realized how
Right.
important it was that you met him, that you were a part of this show,
Yeah.
and how it catapulted you to where you are now
Yeah.
and the lives that it's going to influence based on,
Yeah.
these experiences.
Moments,
It's
right?
it's
Yeah.
the little things matter,
Huh.
and how you treat every single little interaction and experience, and even being able to sit here and talk with you this morning. I mean,
Yeah.
that these are life's beautiful moments.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting, one of the more valuable things that I hope that can transpire through interacting with these young people is getting them to understand that for so long, and it's me going way deeper now, like for so long, I didn't grasp and appreciate the small wins because I was never taught or I never understood that the journey is more important than the destination, right? I was always, remember, the dollar, the car. I was always chasing the destination and not grasping like, man, you just not not only did you get Debbie Allen's phone number, you met her. That in and of itself, you know,
Yeah.
and to understand that now and to sit back and say,
Yep.
so what I want to make sure that they can fully understand is that the bits and pieces really matter. Like just the other day, as I'm typing the response to Tim on the the feedback, I wanted to basically write a dissertation of what that actually meant. For one, to have the ability to meet with 8 investors at one time, right? Even though I know that 9 times out of 10 the products or services that I'm offering it may not align with what they do, but it's just the fact that that win alone says, man, you just met with this number of people like that. Most people won't have that opportunity. They may not have an opportunity to meet one.
Yep.
So that in and of itself I'm extremely grateful for because who knows what might happen. I might see them somewhere and say boom boom boom, or they might say I know you from somewhere, whatever. And I'm good with that
Yeah.
because something happened. I got moved just a hair.
Yep.
I got moved just a hair. And so if I can get them to understand the small pieces, when you put those small pieces together, that package is just unreal.
Yeah.
That story alone is just, so I'm excited for that.
Well, good. And so if supporters want to get involved or help, is there a way to do that right now, or?
So full launch, the goal is to go full launch. That entails accepting of donations. That entails, looking for corporate sponsors, um, uh, auditioning. And when I say auditioning, it's very small process that we're going to go through because the training is the thing.
Sure.
I didn't start as a singer, right? I was a dancer. And so, but getting in that choir and being a part of a mass elevated me. And then my director, Raymond, he worked and he worked and he worked and he worked, and we just learned and then learned and learned and learned. And so I didn't start as I wouldn't even consider myself the best, like Luther Vandross or Donny Hathaway kind of thing. It's just it's the package of the performer that drives me. So same thing, like you don't have to be the best or even good, right? So we're just going to get you and find the interest, but understand that when you do apply and audition for this, like there's a dedication that's attached to it. So all that to say, you know, August is when full on launch is going to be.
I'm very excited for you.
Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea.
Well, good. I'm stoked to follow the journey. I'm, you know,
Of
so
course, I'm going to ask you to be a part of
oh my God,
it.
I can't
Yeah,
carry a
yeah,
tune to
you're right.
save my
No, no.
life,
Well,
but
it's
anything I can do to
yeah,
support,
yeah.
I'm all
Look,
yours. So
as many mouths and ears and reach outs that I can have as a part of this, I would 100% appreciate. So by saying I'd ask you to be a part of it, that means in whatever capacity you find in your heart to be a part of it. Like so, yeah.
consider it done. I'm
I
honored.
thank you, thank you.
Well, we have explored, the depth of your experience and brand building and your vision for the choir and, your amazing sort of journey. Now I'm going to do something that I didn't tell you about ahead of
Okay.
time.
All right.
This is 10 quick
All
questions.
right.
They're sort of either ors,
Okay.
and it's an
Hmm.
attempt to get to learn a little bit about you
Okay.
in a fast-paced way.
Love it.
You
Love it.
ready?
Yep.
All right. So, night owl or early bird?
Oh, night owl.
Hmm. Favorite superhero?
Because of his depth now, Batman.
Ooh, that is a good one. All right. Would you rather explore space or deep sea?
Oh, it's got to be space. It's got to be space.
First thing you do when you have a new idea, write it down or tell someone.
Oh, well, if I had to choose, tell someone.
Hmm. Preferred work environment, office or remote? Or, co-working or collaborative or remote.
Collaborative for sure.
First app you check in the morning.
Ugh. Uh, I guess I would say X. Well, I still say Twitter,
Yeah, I know.
but so yeah, that's X.
What's a hobby you'd love to pick up?
Ooh, to pick up drums.
Biggest motivator, success or passion?
Biggest motivator, success or passion? Passion.
Preferred learning style, visual or auditory?
Oh gosh, I'll
I
tell you about
tailored
that.
these.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
tailored these.
Oh man. Visual.
All right. And give me your favorite decade. Are we going 80s or 90s?
Oh, 80s.
All right. All
80s.
right.
That was Michael Jackson.
And I know that holds a
Yeah,
special place in your heart, and
yeah,
we'll have to have you back on the
yeah,
show to be
yeah,
able to
yeah.
revisit what you're
Definitely,
doing next.
definitely.
But I just want to say thank you very much.
I
It's
thank you.
been beautiful talking with you this morning,
I
and
appreciate this.
yeah,
Believe me, I appreciate this.
good, good. Well, thanks for your time, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Until we meet again, let yourself be amazed by the people who dare to make a difference. This has been Who Knew?